I think one of the things to remember is Canada no longer has any domestic production capacity for vaccines. We used to have it decades ago, but we no longer have it. Countries like the United States, Germany, and the UK do have domestic pharmaceutical facilities, which is why they're obviously going to prioritize helping their citizens first. So Canada did two things over the past months. First of all, we've begun to invest once again in ensuring that Canada will have domestic vaccine production capacity because we never want to be caught short again without the ability to support Canadians directly, and that will be in place in the coming years. If ever there is another pandemic, we will not be caught on the wrong foot again. But secondly, that's why recognizing the challenges we had around getting vaccines from other countries to Canada, the Canadian government signed a record number of agreements with vaccine producers, potential vaccine producers around the world. We have reached out and have actually one of the very best vaccine portfolios of any country around the world, with far more doses for Canadians potentially than we actually have Canadian population. That's because we don't know which vaccines are going to be most effective, which ones are going to arrive early, but we have done everything we can to ensure that Canadians get these vaccines as quickly as possible and as effectively as possible. But of course, in all cases, we are in for, as a world, a number more months where we have to do everything to keep our cases down before vaccines get here so that we are able to get through this as best as possible, which is why people need to continue to stay safe and limit the spread of COVID-19. Yes, the very first vaccines that roll off an assembly line in a given country are likely to be given to citizens of that particular country. But shortly afterwards, they will start honoring and delivering on the contracts that they signed with other countries, including with Canada. We've secured millions of doses of the vaccines, of the various vaccine candidates around the world, and we're expecting to start receiving those doses in the first few months of 2021.
Yeah, sir. Also on the vaccine front, there's been some confusion about exactly when your government will be ready to distribute vaccines. I know you can't say for sure when you'll actually have them, but when will the government be ready to distribute those vaccines to provinces and territories, and will the military be involved in that distribution?
I think everyone is rightly focused on vaccines because we know that without a vaccine, we don't get through this pandemic. And we are looking forward to being able to vaccinate Canadians in the coming months. We know that in order to know exactly which vaccines are going to be effective, we're going to have to watch the trials carefully. We're going to have to see the approvals process. We're going to have to set up logistical streams to be able to deliver those vaccines to Canadians. And those are all things that we're working on right now. But one of the reasons why we signed a range of agreements for vaccines with many different companies is because we know that not all vaccines are going to be equally effective. Some may face challenges around production and delivery, and we wanted to make sure that we were covering all the bases to ensure that Canadians would get them as quickly as possible and have them be as effective as possible. So we are working with a number of partners, including the Canadian military, to ensure that as soon as vaccines arrive and are deemed safe, they will be distributed to Canadians. We're making sure that we have the plan in place to move as quickly as possible, but it is premature to start, crossing out, circling dates on a calendar or saying that this vaccine is going to arrive in this amount on this day in this community, because there's still a lot of work to do between now and then. But we're on it, just like we've been on every element of protecting Canadians in this pandemic.
I'm also going to go back on vaccines. I'm just wondering, what guarantees do you have from the pharmaceutical companies as well as from our allies that the delivery of vaccines to Canada will not be significantly delayed because of mass vaccination programs in other countries who've approved these vaccines first? And also, will Canada start receiving shipments before the vaccines themselves are approved in Canada so that they can get out to Canadians?
We have signed strong contracts with various vaccine companies, and we are working closely with allies on ensuring that there is a free flow of delivery of contracts. We know that this is a preoccupation that many people have, which is why it was something that we all talked about on this weekend's G20 virtual summit. It's really important to ensure that everyone gets access to vaccines around the world, because no one place gets through COVID-19 until all places are done with COVID-19. In regards to the question on vaccines arriving, we are working as quickly as possible with the data that vaccine companies are providing us to ensure that approval of these vaccines happens rapidly, so that there is no delay between them arriving and being distributed to Canadians. But we will not cut any corners when it comes to protecting Canadians' safety. We're looking very carefully at what our allies are doing in terms of approval of various vaccines, but at the same time, we know how important it is that as many people as possible get these vaccines, which is why we need to guarantee to Canadians that they will be safe for them, so as many people as possible will get the vaccines.
And I'm wondering if this time you're talking about us securing these vaccines, but have you got assurances from our allies, from the pharmaceutical companies, that there's not going to be, say, export controls on these vaccines once they're produced that's going to get in the way of Canadians getting these vaccines?
We obviously learned a lot and had certain challenges on delivering PPE in the spring, because it was, as you say, a real challenge and lots of global competition, which was why at the same time as we managed to deliver massive amounts of PPE to Canada, we developed domestic industries at the same time. So we have made in Canada solutions. At the same time, we worked with our partners to ensure that when we saw challenges around delivery of 3M products, for example, we worked closely with the United States to emphasize the integration of our supply lines that flow back and forth across the border, and ensured that essential supplies continue to be delivered. As a world, we are very aware and discussing the challenges around the necessity for free flow of goods across the borders, particularly medical supplies and vaccines. It was a topic of discussion this weekend at the G20, and we've all committed and understood that no one place gets through this pandemic until all of us get through this pandemic, and I'm confident that we're going to be able to access the necessary vaccines for Canadians across international borders.